लोके क्लेशाग्नि संतप्ते प्रादुर्भूतो महारथः नमोस्तु बोधिसत्वाय संबुद्धाय नमो नमः। अज्ञानतिमिरैलोके प्रादुर्भूत प्रदीपकः नमोस्तु बोधिसत्वाय संबुद्धाय नमो नमः। When the world was scorched by the fire of suffering, there arose one of vast and boundless heart. Salutations to the Bodhisattva. Again and again, salutations to the fully awakened one. And when the world was enveloped in the darkness of ignorance, there appeared the one who became its radiant lamp. Salutations to Bodhisattva. Salutations again and again to the fully awakened one. So last time we had seen that Prince Siddhartha had been caged in his paradise, which the king had made for him. And when we had ended, we were discussing that he had everything what a human being thinks he desires. Why I am telling things? Because we do not know what we desire actually. And he became completely disgusted. So we have seen he is telling his wife, Yashodhara, life such as this is weariness inexpressible, and how men endure it I don't know. Without change, break or ripple, the sun's shiny days glide past, each bringing in its hand the same offering of enjoyment, which is as monotonous as a dove's cooing. My life is without hope, for having all, what is there to hope for? And what I have is oversweet. It cloys in the tasting like honey. So we had a brief discussion on how Siddhartha's weariness arises from the Vedantic truth that sense pleasures are finite. And whatever is finite, one day inevitably also bring its opposite, today or tomorrow. Joy will bring sorrow, youth will bring old age, all these things have to be there. When the mind is surrounded only by pleasure without contrast or challenge, then it begins to taste the inherent emptiness of whatever is transient. For nothing in the world can satisfy our longing for the infinite. Longing for the infinite can only be satisfied by the infinite, no? That is understood. So Buddha's despair is not a defect of the circumstance, but actually it is a spiritual intuition, a dawning recognition that even the so-called paradise is bondage when it is built on things which will not last. So by now we have seen Yashodhara had become deeply worried that now it is difficult, what to do now? We have given him everything, but still he is feeling the emptiness. So she said, now she was worried, and to that worried Yashodhara, Siddhartha says, now he is inside a paradise, but he can hear what is going on outside. That is the scenario. So he says, I hear the noise of the hammers outside the gardens, the cry of the plower. And it is understood that even in the palace something would go wrong. So some people would come for repair. No, that way we can also see. So anyway, I hear the songs of the maids who come home with cattle from the outer meadows. And I say that these people have lives better than mine. And if I could change, I would. Means if I could interchange with them, I would. For sweet must be their sleep and glad their leisure. But for me, life is all idleness and sleep. I will ask my father to let me also go out and labor in the glad world outside this prison that buys its food with happy toil. and that I too may know what it is to eat the bread which I have earned. Saying this, again Siddhartha fell into deep meditation, forgot Yashodhara utterly, and his arm relaxed and slipped and fell beside him. And after a while, Yashodhara stood up silently. He did not even know because he was in deep meditation, staring with lost eyes towards the stainless heavens. For a while, she stood and watched, unnoticed, and then crept away, shuddering out of fear. What will happen now? So Siddhartha asked his father. That's also naturally we are just essential portions we are discussing. We will not go into all that. But now the king didn't have any option since his son is asking like that. What to do now? So he had to let Siddhartha go outside the pleasure garden, within which he was feeling suffocated. But if he has to go outside, another garden has to be made, no? That is also a problem. So he made another beautiful garden across the city, so that Siddhartha could go from one to another. And the princes also approved of this. Yashodhara also said, okay. She said, we must stretch the tether. He is bound, keep him bound, but spread the rope, lest the bird guesses that he is not free to fly into the distances. So if the bird hops around a little with the extended feather, it will think I am free. So the second was also a most exquisite garden. Great pools and lakes, white cranes stood meditating all day among the blue lotus blossoms, the very essence of the blue of the waters. And there it was that none may take life or harm the creatures of earth or air and water. Sorrow could never raise its ugly head. So this was what the father planned. And that day came, Siddhartha sent a message to his father. Father, if everything is made ready, then give me permission to drive through the city tomorrow. And he will go with his cousins, Ananda and Devdatta, their names were, and other Shakya noblemen. All of them would go together. So the king said, okay, tomorrow you can go. And that night Siddhartha passed with his wife Yashodhara in a pavilion of Chinese silks with blue and gold dragons by the banks where Rohini wandered among her reeds, singing a little song of sleep. But they didn't know that their last night of peace was with them. Now Siddhartha is going, but Maharaja has to make sure that he doesn't see anything of those four sides anywhere in the city. So he sent a command. Tomorrow the chariot of my son goes through the streets to the paradise of pleasure. See and beware that no aged man or woman be abroad in the city. For my son's eyes must not behold any aged, sick or dead person. It is forbidden by the powers that rule his destiny. Therefore, let only those who are healthy, beautiful and happy, they should only be allowed to walk in the streets. Otherwise, if somebody does not obey this rule, he will suffer punishment. And there was not a soul in the place but heard his command, and touching their foreheads murmured, it is an order. And men, women and children ran busily here and there, garlanding the happy streets and set up poles gilded with painted and gay fluttering banners. And dwarf trees after the Chinese manner were placed along the roads. There were hung canopies of blue and rose silk, and the magnificent tapestries were hung from the windows until the city became as beautiful as the paradise of gods. And bands of children were running like angels. So all these scenario was created. Then steadily as the running of a river, the people poured in from the countryside also to see their young prince. And the ways were gay and happy folk dressed in their best and garlanded with garlands of marigolds and little rosebuds scented with fragrant oils. The towers were filled with men and women clustering like bees. The moons by the trees, the windows and terraces were thronged with eager persons, and men were looking sharply about them to see that nothing was seen which might offend the eyes of the prince. And there was nothing. In bright sunshine, tempered by the cool breath of the mountains, none but the happy and beautiful people with their children were on the path which Siddhartha would take. And he came with the glorious chariot of ivory inlaid with gold, with jewels glittering in the bright, challenging sunbeams. And beside the chariot stood Channa, the charioteer, a young man, well born and noble. And in this chariot sat Siddhartha. As it came through the streets, its horses pacing gently. And all the people swayed towards him with a whisper of awe and delight. So this delight ran through them like the breathing of a breeze that blows the blossoms in passing. See the language. Everything she has written with her own imagination, so well presented. So Siddhartha saw all these young and happy people. Looking upon them, his heart exulted with joy and kindness. And he thought, this is the city of delight. These are my people. And it shall eternally be my bliss to do them good. Eternally, because he did not know that life would end. Look at the strong fathers holding up their little sweet children to see the prince. Their hearts are full of love, even as my own. And the glorious young men, straight and tall, and the antelope-eyed ladies with silken hair. The gods know it is a happy world with all these noble creatures. And my sick dreams of I know not what are dispersed. So Siddhartha also thought, oh, my dreams have gone, everything is all right now. And he saluted with both his hands, smiling right and left to all the people who were there. And sometimes from the chariot he took an armful of flowers and tossed them lightly upon the crowd. And they were gathered with delight. That prince, it had touched the hands of the prince. So he went through the city, marveling, wondering actually, why his father had forbidden it before. What was the reason? But soon he knew the reason. As he flung his last handful of flowers, the appointed moment struck, predestined by the gods. And across the way of the chariot staggered an old man, and the stately stallions arched white necks. They arched them, even the horses stood up like this and tossed their heads in disdain at the revolting sight. For they too had beheld nothing but loveliness till now. The horses also. And because the commands of the Maharaja were stern, I mean, he had commanded and everybody was obeying. So, bro, how did this happen?
Yeah.
So, it is said that the figure was not a mortal man, but divinity hidden in flesh, whom none could hinder. And the myriad people of Kapila saw nothing of this. The old man was seen only by the charioteer and Buddha, nobody else. And how this may be, I cannot tell. The author is telling. But thus have I heard. I have heard this. And the aged man with tattered white hair descending from his bleached and bony head, like lichen from a stricken tree, supporting his painful steps on a stick, weak, imbecile, skinny jaw fallen, disclosing toothless gums, eyes red and bleared, without lashes, and moisture oozing from them, drawing oppressed and painful breath, and terror stricken amidst the crowds, tottered across the flowery way and sank. He could not stand also, there was no strength. He sank on the way, heaped and huddled beside the chariot, casting a look of terror upon the radiant prince, and mumbling and muttering what none could hear, his head shaking like a leaf in the wind. And it was as if darkness and terror obliterated the sun, and all the crowded people bowed forward to see the stopping of the chariot. They could only see that. And breathlessly remembering the Maharaja's commands, but none stirred in his place, and even the children were dumb. Immediately, total silence fell. Yet they had seen nothing but the prince with a shadow fallen over his face, because the prince saw him. And the prince laid his hand on the reins, and the horses stopped. And shaken with horror, he cried aloud to Channa, Channa, what is this? What is this man? If indeed he is a man. And the old man crouched there muttering, and the great fear held Channa silent. What will he say? Again the prince cried out, what is it? And again the crowd sighed like the first stirring of winter winds. And there came answer from Channa's lips where he stood, bowed over the golden reins grasped in his hand. Prince, this is an old man. This is old age. And a long sighing mob of the crowded people heard this, as though their doom had been pronounced when they heard. But the prince, the words almost dying on his lips, said trembling, what is old age? Was this unhappy one born like this? Or has it fallen as a judgment from heaven? Again the crowd sighed. And Channa, face hidden, replied, Prince, he was not so born, nor is this God's anger, but this is the common lot, and to every man born on earth it comes, and nor can it be escaped. This ruin of a man was once a child at his mother's lap, and then a boy filled with laughter and gaiety, a joy to see and hear. Later he became a youth, beautiful, and steeped in the enjoyment of the five pleasures. But old age, dogging the steps of men as a hound with full teeth, has dragged him down at last and had its will of him. Means old age has conquered, and he lives a life of pain, and men avoid him and women pass him by. And some women in the crowd wept loudly, and the air was heavy with sighing. And the old man moaned and muttered with toothless jaws. But the prince, still unbelieving and trembling, said, "And will this doom come upon my great father?" "Yes." "And upon the beauty of my Yashodhara?" "Even so." "And upon me?" Channa could not even reply to this. There was a fearful silence like death among the crowd, and no word from Channa. So that, had a breath stirred in the palms, it would have affrighted the soul. Then suddenly the prince cried aloud, "Turn back the chariot! What heart have I full of pleasures? Tear down the garlands! Where is there room for joy? I have seen what I have seen." And wordless, Channa turned the white horses and guided the chariot along the way it came. Turn around. And the people fell back to make way, and men and women hid their faces like mourners. Why? For it seemed as though, in the knowledge of the prince, knowledge had come to them also. They also first time realized. Knowledge had come to them of what? Of the terror of life and the doom which is inevitable. Now, when Siddhartha returned to the garden house, one person ran before him and told Yashodhara what had happened. And she said, "O ill foreboding heart of mine, did I not know that the anger of the gods must burn against those who would conceal their righteous doom from any man born upon this cruel earth? Who can fight with fate? Now what can be done?" So she sent the message to the king telling him of what happened. And as soon as Siddhartha came, she came to him. Still, everything was same inside. All the palace, all the joys. But nothing was the same. Something in Siddhartha's eyes held his wife from him. She had no courage to go near. So she went and sat herself humbly on the ground before him, but at a distance. And at last Siddhartha said, "This was the secret. You knew it and did not tell me." And there was no sound in the hall. Then Siddhartha continued, "You saw me fed with lies such as these." And he flung out his hand against all the luxuries. "And you did not tell me that they were the mask of horror." Yashodhara bowed her head upon her hands, speechless. What could she say? And I, most pitiable, most ignorant, was rejoicing. Siddhartha is telling. And now I have learned that from this there is no escape. For the gods have appointed no end to our misery. no door from this prison, but we must live eternally and horribly, old and disgraced in body and mind. Because he still doesn't know that there is death. So he's thinking everyone will become old and live like that eternally. Could a man but end it and fall into the dark and be forgotten? I will not blame you, he's telling Yashodhara. But my father, he also did not tell me. And in the hall there was no sound at all. And the princess, hiding her face, thought, shall I tell him of the end, of death? But she dared not. And Siddhartha called aloud for the servants and said, deface these pictures, for they are lies, all these luxurious things. And the sight of them turns the knife in the wound. Blot them out with blackness. So it was done. And the king, when he heard, in terror, he told them, redouble the pleasures of the paradise. But now, nothing could be done. They tried, but Yashodhara's heart failed her when she saw the prince's eyes coldly averted. Siddhartha was not even looking at those things. Coldly averted from all the enjoyments that might have stirred the eternal gods also. And again she sent a message to the king. Your son, my lord, will not look also upon all the beauty that surrounds him. Send him forth into freedom. For penned in these sweet gardens, he muses and meditates on what is in his heart. I cannot know. But fear very terribly. But again guard the way so that no sad sight approach him. For if he sees more, there is no chance. Even if there is some chance now. Again orders were given, and as before the prince set forth. But this time he was not joyous. He was grave and sad. And the crowds also shared his mood, as if they had also awakened to this terrible truth, and the city could not rejoice. And as they neared the street, all aflutter with banners and flowers, etc., now he saw the second sight. What was it? As if divinity masked itself in tortured flesh. And by the way was seen a sick man struggling for life in a losing battle. Because life has to go one day. His body was swollen and disfigured, his hollow cheeks blazed with fever, and in his dying eyes, fear and agony could be seen. Scarce could he drag himself along, moaning and crying for pity, and hot tears pouring and searing his cheeks, as if those hot tears are burning their cheeks as they ran. And seeing it, the prince set his hands on the reins and checked the horses and cried aloud to Channa, what is this horror? And the charioteer Channa, with fear tearing at his vitals, he was now shaking with fear, Channa, yet compelled by a force beyond all resistance to utter no other than the truth, answered, Prince, this is a sick man. The four elements of his body are all confused and disordered. He is worn, feeble, and strengthless, tortured in body and mind, dependent upon the mercy of human beings, whose own evil day is but postponed. It is but postponed. Nobody can avoid it. And a shudder ran through the crowd as the prince questioned him, shrinking back as one in mortal fear. And this too is the common doom. Prince, none can escape it. And the suffering of old age is compounded by misery like this. Means already there is suffering. And this will be even increased by this disease. Prince, so it is. And Siddhartha said, turn my chariot, I will go no further. I have seen what I have seen. And the news was carried to the king, and he was almost beside himself, raging with anger. And he sent for the minister and cried to him, what shall we do? For my son is learning the guarded secrets, and if I keep him shut in the garden, he will rebel and break away. But if I send him through the city, such horrible sights afflict me and disperse my hopes in him. So he said to the minister, is it possible for a king like myself? And isn't it possible that I am the king? Isn't it possible that a few short hours the city ways should be guarded from horror while my son goes through? But the old wise minister shook his head. He said, sir, I remember very well. The city was searched and guarded. It was searched twice. So what can I say, Maharaja? How did he saw this? May it not be that the high gods being resolved and may not be thwarted, and that we fight against an iron destiny. Great fear possesses me, the minister is telling. But the king said angrily in reply, foolish old man, was I not given the choice? If I could withhold the truth, I was told Siddhartha would become a great king. So once more I shall send him. And if this time something happens, you will bear the punishment. Again the prince was sent out. But this time also, though the city was decorated and garlanded, there was not even a semblance of joy. And the very horses also went with drooped heads, as though fear was their charioteer. As they were, see the language, and the charioteer was fear. And as they reached the street where most of the people were crowded, the divinity was again ready with his work, having prepared a sight terrible and woeful. For slowly preceding the chariot, in front of the chariot, there was a funeral train with 4 men bearing a bier, and lying on it was a body, cold and stiff, with dropped jaw and dreadful dead eyes, staring blindly at the sun. Withered flowers lay beside him, and the mourners, those who were crying, beat their breasts and wept aloud, filling the air with wailing and lamentation. And the prince closed his eyes to shut out the horror, clenched his palms and said, now what is this? And Channa, not daring to look at the prince directly, answered in a very low voice, as if bowed under the weight of words. He was bowed down with the weight of the words he was compelled to utter. Prince, this is a dead man. All the powers of his body are destroyed. Life has departed. His heart is without thought. His intellect is dispersed. His spirit has fled. His body withered, stretched out like a dead log. He has been taken away from all who loved him. And mourning, they carry him forth to burn and obliterate him. For they also, even though they loved him, will have no more of his presence, which has now become loathsome, but cast him from them utterly. This is death. And the prince, into his clenched hands, he murmured, "Is this also the common lot?" And the charioteer replied with hidden face, "Prince, so it is. He who begins his life must end it. Thus. And it is not that there is a fixed time for this end. Death may come at any moment and seize us and carry us away into the darkness. Then Siddhartha sank down in the chariot. He could not even stand. His soul warring with his body, catching at the leaning board for support, hiding his face from the light of the day as the dead man was borne on before him, and wailing and lamentation filled the air. And into his clenched hands the prince murmured, "O terrible delusion of mortal men, who are born in pain and utterly deluded, and are brought through grief and sickness and old age to this terrible end. Disperse the people, turn back my chariot. The whole world is a lie. I have seen what I have seen." So the people melted silently away in tears as clouds disperse in the rain. See the similes. For seeing the prince's horror and amazement, this is the moral of the story. Seeing the prince's horror and amazement in learning the truth for the first time, they also sounded the depths of their own misery. And life appeared to them to be a traitor, and all the universe was no comfort to them also now. They also realized. But Channa the charioteer, not daring to return because of Maharaja's strict command, drove onward to that second paradise. And the prince, sitting in his chariot, neither knew nor cared. Siddhartha was speaking to himself, "O creatures most miserable, unheeding the dooms of age and death, forgetful of the briefness of beauty and youth, unconscious that above your throats is suspended the sharp, two-edged sword, how wretched is your empty playing in the very jaws of destruction." And though he spoke nothing, they saw the homeless horror in his eyes, all the people. And again they shrank away afraid. Then Siddhartha reached his destination, that so called paradise, where he was surrounded by everything beautiful, but for him everything had changed. Now Siddhartha sat behind a tree, feet folded, hands laid upon his knees in perfect immobility, and he thought, hollow compliance and a protesting heart. Is this life? Is there something better? Now indeed all that was hidden from me bursts upon my mind as when a flash of lightning tears the dark, and things I put aside for want of comprehension shriek aloud in my ears. And these thoughts and many like them, black and miserable, stormed about him in the wreckage of the world. He sat alone by the Rohini, his gaze dwelling on the silver peaks far off and serene in blue air, and at his feet little fish darted in the transparency of the pure waters. And when the wild white swans spread snowy vans above his head, taking wing for the mountains and for far lands beyond that he knew not, it seemed in his deep musings that all these happy creatures, the swan and all these things, they were subject to a law they knew and obeyed with content. And he thought, maybe these people's lives are better than mine. Because they know, still they are content. But I am not content. Why was he not content? Because he was not an ordinary man. So there is a poem by Swami Vivekananda in which he says, in Bangla poetry in Bangla, so he says, Joto Uccho Tumar Hridoy, the more you rise above, the more you rise in the scale of evolution, the more your heart is loving and pure, Tato Dukkho Janive Nishchoy. No, the more you will suffer. The nobler person you are, the more you will suffer. Why? Because the unevolved person does not realize all this. He is quite happy, eating, drinking. But when a man starts evolving, and Siddhartha was the highest evolution of human being, then he realizes this terrible lie which the world is. The next day, Siddhartha sent a message to the king. Great Father, since now I know all the secrets and there is nothing hidden from me, what hinders that I should go free and see everything? There is one chance that it may be that some sight which is joyful, maybe, shall meet my eyes and relieve the burning that consumes me. Set your prisoner free. It is your son who beseeches. What could the king do? He said, okay, gave his permission. Then Siddhartha sent another message. And this time, let the city be neither decorated nor feasting. I desire to see the life of the people as it actually is, not as they would pretend it is lived, to please us great ones. The king had nothing to say now. That was also granted. Therefore, once more the chariot and the horses were prepared. And Siddhartha passed through the city into a new world which he would see for the first time. And he said within himself, the world is built on pain and its foundations laid in agony. If there be a way out of this, where is it? If there be a law of peace, where shall I find it? For I am bound in the dungeons of despair. Then after a while, moved to sympathy by the terrible misery of all the people, Siddhartha dismounted from the chariot, forcing himself to look steadfastly upon the sufferings of man and beast, and sat down beneath a tree, reflecting on the ways of birth and death. He gave himself up to deep meditation on the transiency and the progress of all finally going towards destruction, desiring with all his soul that somewhere, anywhere, he might behold something which does not change, which is not destroyed, which is abiding, and there he may find his rest. And he asked of his soul, is there safety in riches? Are the rich exempt from this? No, indeed. They are in a more pitiable condition, for their luxuries consume them body and soul, making their bodies the home of disease and death, and the souls the harbors of cowardice and terror. For it is harder to leave a palace of gold than a hut. And these are the spoilt children of the universe. So, in all the three worlds, I see no refuge at all from these three enemies: old age, disease, and death. Thinking thus, the prince again climbed his chariot and continued to ride further. But as he went further, the heat of the day strengthened and became like a weight of lead, oppressive even beneath the silk canopy of the chariot. And the perspiration stood on his brow, and his garments clung to the moisture of his skin, and weariness weighed upon him. But he saw, for all this terrible heat, men are perspiring, people are suffering, but still they are working. They have no choice. But for all this, the toil about him could not cease, for men must eat, and work be completed, and the fields of the king ploughed. And he saw how the laborers struggled with painful exertion, their bodies bent, their wet hair falling about haggard faces, their bodies fouled with mud and dust. And some were old and some were weak. Yet all must greatly toil, and very pitiful was it to see their strained muscles and starting eyes. The oxen also, they toiling so pitifully and with no reward, their lolling tongues and gaping jaws, the whip and goad intending smooth flanks until bright blood drops started, and they trembled and shrank. And all these things who were being tortured, Siddhartha silently observed. As Swami Vivekananda says, this tremendous wheel of karma stops neither for the widow's tears nor the orphan's cry. So he saw this, how people were suffering. What must he have felt? Seeing the laborers and animals straining under the heat, Siddhartha must have felt the shock of realizing that suffering is not accidental but structural, woven into the very machinery of life. The relentless toil before him revealed the impartial, unpausing wheel of karma, which moves on without regard for the weak or the innocent or those who are in pain. In that moment, he must have understood that no palace, no pleasure, no privilege can shield one from the world where all beings are caught in this inexorable cycle. This recognition stirred in him the first compassion, the deep compassion. And with compassion, what came? The deep revolt, revulsion, the intuition that there can be no peace here. That liberation, if it is there, it must be beyond the merciless turning of the wheel of cause and effect. Prince again got down and seeing a large banyan tree, sat under it in deep meditation. And as he meditated, his heart fixed, the five senses as if extinguished, lost in the clear light of insight, he entered on the first stage of rapture. And now he saw with perfect clarity the misery and sorrow of the world, sounding its deep agony and loss, the ruin wrought by age, disease, and death, the hopeless darkness beyond. And slowly at length, when he came down from meditation, thoughts were collected. He became aware of what? He became aware of a man who was approaching him. This man carried a bowl in his hand. He wore a coarse robe of yellow and he was coming slowly on the roadway. And their eyes met. Siddhartha thought, who is this person? For his face is calm and joyful, and his eyes bespeak a soul at rest. Nor has he the look of one tricked by sensual pleasures. He is not that kind. But it is obvious from his face that austerity and contentment guide him. And though he treads on the earth, it does not hold him. And what is this bowl in his hand? So Siddhartha asked this person, who are you? The stranger, with due salutation, grave and sweet, replied, I am a religious mendicant who, shuddering at the onslaught of age, disease, and death, seeing that all things are transient and permanence nowhere to be found, have left the fetters of my home behind me, that I may search for happiness that is trustworthy, that decays not, that is imperishable. And it is there regardless of wealth and beauty. Such is the only peace that will content me. I cannot be taken in by this world. And Siddhartha, in deep amazement, because he found a kinsman, no, he found someone who was thinking along the same lines. He inquired eagerly, "You are searching for that peace, O wise man. Where are you seeking it?" Because if he is told, he will also seek that, no? "Great Lord, I seek it in solitude, in the tranquility of deep woods. There in the quiet dwells enlightenment. And I carry this bowl that the charitable people may deposit the alms of food within it. And this is all I ask of the world. I want nothing else. Because in the world there is nothing worth having. And this man left in Siddhartha the first hope that enlightened the midnight of grief. And the prince said within his soul, "Now I have found a seeker like me. And this is the life I covet. For the pleasures of earth are but sea waters, enraging the thirst they seem to quench." So sea water, salty water, what will happen? If you are thirsty, if you take it, it will make you more thirsty. So everything in the world, whatever there is of sense pleasure, they will make you more thirsty. And what has life to offer but this one thing, the search for the truth? The whole wide earth weeps uncomforted. And how cruel I be if I do not help it, even with my blood and tears. I also seek the way, and it must surely open before me. This is the result. And this was his dissatisfaction. So upon this, we will end by quoting Swami Vivekananda. He says, "Spirituality begins with this tremendous dissatisfaction with the present state of things, with our lives, with a hatred, an intense hatred for this patching up of life. Got something, it has gone, again starts seeking for some other stupid pleasure. So spirituality begins with an unbounded disgust for this fraud and lies. He alone can be spiritual who dares say, as the mighty Buddha once said under the bo tree, when this idea of practicality appeared before him. Don't be impractical. Take life as it is. Everyone is living. You also live. So when this idea appeared before Buddha, he saw that it was nonsense, but yet could not find a way out. When the temptation came to him to give up his search for truth, to go back to the world and live the old life of fraud, calling things by wrong names, telling lies to oneself and to everybody, the giant conquered it and said, "Death is better. Death is better than a vegetating, ignorant life. It is better to die on the battlefield than to live a life of defeat." This is the basis of religion. When a man takes this stand, he is on the way to find the truth. He is on the way to find God. So let us stop here. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri